Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon at the D3 Fashion Talks. My name is Simon Locke. I'm the founder and CEO of Ord.com, and I'm really pleased to be here, firstly at Fashion Forward in Dubai, and have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our business and what we're doing to rewire the business of fashion. It's an interesting journey that I find myself here today, because a lot of the initial development work for Ord.com was actually done here in Dubai. So it's a bit of a homecoming to sorts to be able to come back here and to be able to tell the industry what we've been doing to develop it. I was actually brought here to Dubai to help develop some fashion events within the industry. Was fortunate enough to also meet my loving wife here in Dubai, who was the style director of Harper's Bazaar at the time, and she's now our fashion director of Ord.com. So we feel very happy and welcome to be back in Dubai. So let me give you a bit of background to some of the. Can we just go to the first slide, please? It's always when you have a technology powering the business of fashion, the technology always stops working, doesn't it? A bit of background to our organisation, which will help to put into context what we're doing now. As an organisation, we've actually been around in the business of fashion for about 30 years. We started in Australia with developing a fashion events and PR company, and saw an opportunity then to establish the first fashion week in the Southern Hemisphere in Sydney, and we created Mercedes-Benz Australian Fashion Week. It was at the time, in fact, the first fashion week in the world to be sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, and we were instrumental in introducing Mercedes to fashion weeks around the world, and I think on last count they now sponsored something like about 17 fashion weeks around the world. We produce fashion weeks not only in Sydney but in Singapore and Hong Kong, in India and Pakistan, and they're also invited to work with the industry here in the Middle East. We sold that company to IMG, and some of you might be aware of IMG Fashion and IMG Models, and for a while I was Senior Vice President of that organisation, and as you might know, they run New York Fashion Week and have involvement in London, Milan, and a number of fashion weeks around the world. So that was a very interesting time as fashion weeks were literally exploding around the world. We've also, as a company, owned our own wholesale agencies in London, in New York, in Japan, and also in Australia. So our entire life has been trying to sell wholesale collections of ready-to-wear designers to retailers, to department stores, to multi-label boutiques, and to now online retailers around the world. So we've been really fortunate enough to be at the cutting edge, I guess, of the business of fashion for quite some period of time. And as an organisation, we've always really tried to embrace innovation and new technologies. We were, in fact, believe it or not, back in 2001, the first people to attempt to live stream a fashion show from anywhere in the world. And in those days, it was more like, this sort of thing happening, because video streaming is really not what it was today. So we've always looked at how technology can drive the business of fashion. And when you look at the business of fashion and what's happening now, I mean, everyone talks about how the fashion system is broken and how it's become really difficult to navigate, whether you're a designer or retailer. So to put into context some of the things I'm talking about today, I think it's worthwhile just having a bit of a understanding of, just the next slide please, of how this Fashion Week circuit was created and came into being and has morphed and has been changed. So I mean, a lot of you will know, including my learned colleague down here, Mr. Godfrey Deeney, who has been part of the International Fashion Week circuit since its creation in 1930, I think, wasn't it? No, not quite. But just a bit of a history. I mean, the first ready-to-wear collections really came out of the Second World War in Paris. I mean, the French government was quite visionary in thinking that to rebuild their economy, they had some great advantages in luxury and perfumery and fashion, and that this was a good way to inject growth and stimulus into the economy, and they brought together what was an organization at the time called the Chambre Syndicale to try and formalize what was already happening, and that is seasonally, autumn, winter, spring, summer. The couturier houses were presenting their ready-to-wear collections and trying to attract buyers from around Europe and France to come. So they formalized that, and they created a schedule twice a year. Rather than designers being spread out over a 6 or 8 week period, they'd bring them all together into 1 week. And it obviously made sense then, and it made it easier for buyers to travel, you know, regionally from France or from around Europe to come and see the new ready-to-wear collections. It was also at a time when fashion print media was really starting to become quite powerful as a communication tool to women. And of course, you know, French Vogue being one of the real, I guess, founders of that movement, and Elle and Marie Claire spreading eventually around the world. So they really had created a really interesting commercial ecosystem that in the beginning, while it evolved, I don't think they really sat down and wrote the strategy. But of course, what happened is that, you know, they'd show clothes in, you know, February, March, and they would be the autumn-winter collections, and the magazines would cover them, and then it would take 6 months for those clothes to be produced and developed, and lo and behold, when those collections arrived in store, the print magazines coverage would come out, and all these wonderful collections would be in the magazines, and people would go in store and shop those collections. So it was an analog strategy, if you like, but it was a very, very successful one. Tremendously successful. And for a moment, Paris had it all to themselves with Paris Fashion Week. And then there was a gentleman in Milan by the name of Beppe Modenese, another industry visionary, who, along with his counterparts of Versace and Armani and others, said, hang on. Everyone thinks Paris is the center of the universe for fashion. It is clearly not. It's Milan. We need to have our own fashion week. And so eventually, with the Camera della Moda, Milan Fashion Week was born. And of course, Beppe, being the entrepreneur that he was at the time, thought, okay, well, let's do it before Paris. So we'll try and get the budgets of the buyers before they go and spend the rest of it in Paris. So what we'll do the week before Paris. So that seemed like a very logical move. So Paris and Milan, twice a year on the schedule. Things seemed to be going pretty well. And of course, then the British Fashion Council started to get their nose out of joint and thinking, well, hang on here. I mean, you know, we're the center of fashion in Europe. You know, we should have a slice of this action. We should have our own fashion week. And so the British Council came along and some 25, 26 years ago established London Fashion Week. And they went, you know what? I think we should go before Milan, because we'll try and steal the budgets before people go to Milan and Paris. And so subsequently, London came online. And then a very good and dear friend of mine, Fern Mallis, who was running the CFDA in New York at the time, decided, hang on, what's happening here in the US? The American designers are missing out. They're the heroes in all of this. They should have a fashion week. And they created what originally was called 6 on 7th. In the fashion garment district, eventually became New York Fashion Week, and they launched New York Fashion Week some 22, 23 years ago in the tents in Bryant Park. So, and that was how really the International Fashion Week circuit came into being, and was pretty robust then for a period of time when there was the 4 major players. In between, Tokyo had sort of said, okay, we're going to do something for the Japanese, but it was originally spread over a month and wasn't really focused, and, you know, still has sort of trials and tribulations in attracting people. So that's when I sort of entered into the scene with the 4 major fashion weeks established and not much else. And we thought as an industry, a lot of ourselves on the other side of the world in Sydney. I knew we had a depth of talent there. Thought, well, why couldn't we establish a fashion week on the other side of the world in Sydney, Australia, and encourage all the media and buyers to come all the way to Sydney? We had a couple of advantages at a time. We were leading up to the Olympics. There was a lot of talk about Sydney and Australia as a fantastic destination to travel to. We did have a lot of great talent in our industry. Many of you will be aware today that launched at Australian Fashion Week, from Zimmerman through to Ellery. And so we established what really was, in all intents and purposes, I guess, the first fashion week outside of the major fashion centres. That event is now some 22 years old. that we're going on the International Fashion Week circuit and has really developed a great reputation for itself. However, in between when we started Australian Fashion Week now, the world just changed and this schedule got completely out of control. As a result of what we did in Sydney, a lot of cities around the world said, if some mob on the other side of the world with half a dozen decent designers can launch a fashion week, well, so can we. The New York Times did a survey a few years ago, and there was 243 cities around the world that laid claim to having a fashion week based on their industry. So, we've now got this ecosystem, 43 fashion weeks, men's, women's, New York, London, Paris, Milan. Hang on, what about men's? The men's industry is feeling as though I'm missing out here. This is crazy. I need to have my own fashion week. So it was originally they'd have some buying showrooms in Paris and Milan. That formulated into a men's schedule. Then London got excited about it. We needed to have a London men's fashion week. Then New York got excited about it. And so we ended up with, 4 major fashion weeks for women's. Because then also what happened, we had this other thing come in called fast fashion. Zara and H&M and everyone decided there was a new way of delivering fashion. Every month we need new drops, we need new merchandise to show our consumers. So what do the department stores do? They went back to their ready-to-wear designers and say, you just can't show twice a year. We need drops every month. So we need pre-collections, we need resort collections, we need collections in between. Okay, so the industry responded. Now it has 4 major buying seasons for women's. It has 2 major buying seasons for men's. There's 243 fashion weeks around the world. There's just this chaotic traveling roadshow of fabulousness and commercial power, which is becoming very difficult to navigate. And so when BOF and Fashion Network and Women's Wear Daily keep saying the system is broken, I don't think it's necessarily broken. It's evolved in a way that's very different to what it used to be. And people need to learn how to navigate and use it best themselves. Because now if you're a buyer, it's not as simple as just going to Paris twice a year. To be able to procure your collections, to discover new emerging talent, it's spread in showrooms and locations all around the world, and it makes it very, very difficult for you to be able to do your business. So, while this was all going on, we had this going on, the digital revolution. So, for years, the Fashion Week circuit basically drew a curtain around itself and said, no one can come in. Okay, what we do behind here is secret. It's only for the industry. It's only for buyers and invited media. You, the customers, will get to see these images in 6 months' time when the clothes arrive in store and the magazines come out. Well, that was a really great thought in an analog era. But then a couple of little things happened. Someone invented the mobile phone in 1993. I think it was Nokia. Emails in 1996. I can remember when we went from fax to emails trying to attract people to Australian Fashion Week. I mean, it's almost laughable now that was even happening in my lifetime. WordPress in 2003. No one quite knew what to do with WordPress then, but then this word blogger appeared, and all of a sudden people could be independent publishers of their thoughts and news ideas on this crazy thing called the internet. Then we had streaming video. Not video that was like an animated cartoon, but actually you could download it and watch it, and it really started to change a whole number of things in the fashion industry. And then we had the invention of the smartphone with this really powerful little device on it, this amazing camera. And then to coincide with that, we had the invention, the creation of Facebook and social media, and of course the actual powerhouse now of Instagram. And then more recently, we've had the invention of virtual reality and headsets and Oculus Rift. So for a lot of this, the fashion industry, the B2B, the business part of the fashion industry, has sort of in some senses trying to ignore this technology that's been going on and going, oh no, we have fashion shows, people sit in the front row, they get a printed invitation, it's all very important, do we really need this technology? But of course what's happened is that consumers have got to look inside the curtain, and that's completely sort of changed the game forever. So let's look at some of the ways that technology is now impacted on that International Fashion Week circuit. Oh, sorry, go back one. Oh, okay. So, our blogging friends, very, very interesting, the catalyst that changed. So, Susie and all the other sort of new millennial bloggers started to come into the fashion shows and write their point of view on what was happening. And then they started to post their images out of what was happening, and they started to lift up the curtain to really let consumers into what we were doing as an industry. And it was to create, unexpectedly to the industry, believe it or not, but just completely expected to everyone else, consumer demand. I mean, the industry had spent decades educating consumers to say, when you see something in a magazine, could you please walk into Neiman Marcus and buy it? Because it's in store right now. We'd been, I think, 5 decades we educated consumers, and when you see ads up, go in store and buy it. So I don't know how we expected that when we were going to send images around the world into people's smartphones, then we're going to go, oh my God, I love this, the consumers didn't want to buy them. So there's a growing generation of consumer demand that was coming out of it. Then we saw this catalyst of online fashion to become involved in the fashion industry. So it started to get more competitive. It wasn't just about department stores and multi-label boutiques anymore. It was now about online retailers. So the marketplace is getting more and more competitive. And what that means often is that, you know, people are looking to do things more cost effectively and more efficiently to get a competitive advantage. So Neiman Marcus is starting to go, okay, we've got to find a better way to be able to engage with designers. We've got to find a better way to be able to procure, and we're looking at cost savings. So then we had this wonderful little blip in economic history called the global financial crisis. And quite frankly, the International Fashion Week circuit that we saw before did not recover from it in a number of ways. Firstly, one of the big things that happened in the global financial crisis, every CFO of a department store or a multi-label chain went to their head of buying and they said, okay, you know those 16 gorgeous girls that go to Paris on the road? They're on the road for sometimes 24 weeks a year, London, Paris, Milan, staying in nice hotels, doing the showrooms. Well, sorry, your buying team is now 6 people, okay? And you can travel for 20 days a year. We don't care whether you go to New York or Paris, but that's it. So we saw the shrinking of the amount of buyers that were buying and procuring, and their ability to travel. So this really had a huge impact on the Fashion Week circuit, one which we're still seeing today. So then we had the advent of streaming video on demand, and we saw the demise of that absolute atrocity called fashion television. Thank heavens. I think it did more damage to our industry than anything else. It ended up as a soft porn lingerie channel on cable in many countries, and I'm sure it's still out there somewhere, but it doesn't have the focus that it once did, because streaming video took over. And YouTube and the various channels were now able to stream with really quality and understanding the videos and the fashion shows that were coming from around the world, because bandwidth had got a whole stack wider on the internet, and finally we got video streaming to our phones and our laptops and our tablets, which was meaningful. And of course, we've seen the growth of YouTube and Snapchat and others. And then really, as I was saying before, you know, the smartphone really lifted the curtain completely on what was happening. Now, when Godfrey is sitting front row of Dior and Chanel, his thousands of viewers around the world are sitting in the front row with him as he Instagrams. And, you know, we've seen some incredible digital phenomenals, particularly with the Chanel show in Paris. I think the season before last, they had something like 1.2 billion digital impressions from that show into consumers' hands. And of course, that is all driving incredible amount of consumer demand. And it's all delivered through, of course, the social media channels. I mean, we started with Facebook, and that was sort of okay, but Facebook sort of morphed off into a news sort of feed of sorts. And then Instagram has really been the powerhouse now, and we can see the channels being used on Instagram by all the luxury designers, and it's really a way to engage. So now, you know, consumers around the world, soon as a new collection from Balenciaga or in France or Ralph Lauren in New York is launched, it's broadcast around the world, and there is a lot of demand generated for that. So what's been the industry's reaction to this? See now, buy now. Just made logical sense that if we've got the technology to drive the images, the video, and the pictures, if we've got the social media channels to distribute it to billions of people around the world, why don't we capitalize on this phenomenon? And instead of showing wholesale collections on the catwalk, why don't we start to show retail available collections on the catwalk? And this is exactly what many designers are starting to do. I mean, the most innovative and the first to really embrace this was Burberry with Christopher Bailey. I mean, he's brought a lot of innovation, a lot of technical advances into the business. And so they've completely changed the timing of their fashion shows. Now, when they do their show in London Fashion Week each year, in September, they'd normally show their spring-summer if they were showing wholesale, but now they show autumn-winter because it's just about to arrive in store, and they use their fashion show, they broadcast it globally, and you know, we have seen the next day queues in Burberry stores to line up to get that product. They do it very cleverly. They hold all the merchandise till after the show goes out. We've seen some incredible examples with people like Rebecca Minkoff. We've seen Tommy Hilfiger with the GG collection. I mean, obviously, this works very well for designers that have, you know, expansive retail networks who can really capitalize on this phenomenon. And so we're starting to see a lot of traditional Fashion Week shows start to move to this see now, buy now vision. Or designers have each way bets. Okay, I'm going to show my wholesale collection. That's going to be 75% of what's on the runway. And I'm going to do this capsule collection at the end, which is all available on my website to try and capitalize on this. So you're starting to see designers do what they think is best for them. And also there was this whole furphy for a while about, oh my God, we've got to change the complete supply chain if we're going to do see now, buy now. We're going to have to redo our manufacturing and redo our production and redo everything. This is absolutely a non-truth. Burberry didn't change anything. You know, they still have their design in the studio, their sampling, they do their wholesale sales privately to their retailers, then the collection is made up, and they just, instead of doing their fashion show here at wholesale, they just do the fashion show there. That's it. Nothing else has changed. They've just moved the timing of the fashion show, and for them it's become particularly important. I mean, we've seen people like Tom Ford have a bit of a go, you know, I'm going to do see now, buy now, but went back to a wholesale model because, you know, what are his shows? They're really just for highlights of the really special pieces within his collection, and it's all about celebrity. So, you know, he's better off going back to the wholesale form. But I'm sure he'll change his mind again. So that's what we're seeing in the industry at the moment. So what has this had effect on the business of fashion? Well, we've seen consumer-facing fashion weeks happen more and more. We're seeing all the major fashion weeks have a fashion weekend where they open it up to the public. This event, which traditionally would have been a business-to-business event, which is, you know, we're trying to get buyers and media to come to see new emerging designers, collections from the Middle East, is a hybrid now, you know. The majority of activities on the Fashion Forward schedule are open to the public, and everyone's enjoying, and there's a retail pop-up over here, and there's some emerging students. And yes, there's a number of designers here doing wholesale, looking for buyers in the region, but it's only very small. And so there's a number of fashion weeks and fashion festivals around the world that are morphing towards this sort of model. And as I was saying before, buyers are traveling less. They are the most frustrated people in the world at the moment. they've got restricted budgets, they can't do their job when they're in the showroom, they can't spend a week to go to Copenhagen to explore the new emerging designers in Scandinavia. I mean, the reality of the fact here, is there any international buyers here from outside the region? Okay, that sort of says to my point. We saw at the back of the global financial crisis, at the best season we ever had in Mercedes-Benz Australian Fashion Week, was we had 200 individual international buyers come to Sydney, Australia at its peak. Last year we had 5. So that just gives you an indication of with great affection, Australian Fashion Week is in the B League of Fashion Weeks. We're not in the A League, along with London, Paris, Milan, and New York. But even in the top 4, we've seen the number of buyers come down for all sorts of reasons. There's financial ones, there's competitive ones. We've seen safety. We've had so many different terrible incidents happening with terrorism around the world. A lot of the buyers are really nervous. The American buyers are particularly nervous, and sometimes they don't like coming to Paris. After the terrible attacks in Paris, hardly any Japanese buyers turned up to the next fashion week. So there's other factors that are paying. So it's built a different environment for the business of fashion to be done. So just go back a slide, please. So our little company took it upon itself to create a new channel for the business of fashion. And for us, it seemed such an obvious one that if buyers can't always go to a fashion week, if they can't always go to a showroom, and if a designer can't get in his suitcase and travel all around the world to individually see the buyers, how can we create this connection? How can we meaningfully start to do the business of fashion, obviously, online? So our friends in the business-to-consumer area, led by Whistles and Net-a-Porter and Farfetch and others, have been quite innovative in engaging consumers in doing e-commerce online. And now millennials particularly feel very at home in purchasing online. We've seen global apparel statistics grow originally from 3 to 5% of apparel online. It's got to 13, 14, 15%. Analysts are saying it's going to get to 20, 25%. It could even go past that in terms of the amount of apparel purchases online. In terms of wholesale online, basically we started from ground zero. There's none. Apart from emails going with line sheets attached is about the definition of business-to-business online before we started Ord. So what we wanted to do was to go about and have a sort of an attitude a little bit like an international fashion week in the terms of building an online community to be able to showcase ready-to-wear collections. So curation is absolutely the key of what we do. So Ord is an online wholesale platform exclusively for ready-to-wear designers. So we really focus in that top end of the retail pyramid. Our ambition is to work with all the top-tier luxury one brands. We currently work with people like Proenza Schouler and Dynamon Furstenberg and a lot of the new emerging designers like Gabrielle Hurst out of New York. So we want to work with designers that have a like-mindedness in the positioning in the marketplace. And then our retail network, which is the other side of our marketplace, again, has to be curated and it has to be invitation only, and it is all the leading department stores, multi-label boutiques, and online retailers. So we've created a closed environment which is perfectly positioned, the designers to the retailers. So the designers feel comfortable about these retailers seeing their collections, and these retailers know that we're not wasting their time because we've got middle-priced designers or contemporary brands that they're not interested in. So that's the classic marketplace element of Ord.com. But then the big issue was, how can someone place an order for maybe $500,000 US in an online showroom without touching or feeling the collection and to be confident and secure enough in making such a significant purchase? This is not a pair of shoes that you don't fit, you can send back. I mean, this is an entire spring-summer collection from a major designer. So we had to look at what it was going to take to really have the technology to allow buyers to completely understand collections. So consumers are used to, okay, well, you know, give me a photo here, give me a photo there, and if I'm lucky, give me one from the back, and okay, I sort of get the idea, I'll buy that. And if it arrives and I don't like it, I can send it back. Well, we couldn't address the business of fashion in that sense. So how could we give our buyers a complete understanding of collection? So the first technology and the first footprint we had to put in place was we needed to give buyers an understanding of the aspect of every element of a particular outfit. So we had to invent a new way of doing 360-degree images. So 360-degree is not new. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it in various websites, but it's essential in being able to manipulate an image and to be able to see every element of it and to be able to zoom in and really understand the details. So this is the first box we needed to tick. But we're up against so many problems. The fashion industry sort of works like this. It's like, okay, I'm sitting on a beach in Miami and I've got inspiration for my new collection. I'm going to go back and I'm going to get the fabrics and I'm going to get the samples. Okay, now I'm going to do my fashion show. Oh, I don't finish my samples until 6 a.m. in the morning. My fashion show is at 10 p.m. and then I need those samples because the showroom opens the next day. Okay, that's pretty well how it works. So normally 360 will take you 2 or 3 days in a studio with a huge setup and an exorbitant expense to be able to produce these wonderful digital images. Well, we didn't have that. We had, in that scenario, a couple of hours access to the sample collection, either before or after or during while the fashion show is going on. And then we have to have our online showrooms open to be able to support the designer's physical showroom within 12 hours. So we had to come up with a solution to be able to generate 360-degree images. So if we can play the first video, please, and I'll show you the results of what we're able to do at the moment. Okay, so now a buyer can see every element of a look. So this is how we did it. We invented a machine. It's called the Orb. We have the global patent on it. It's mobile. We come to wherever the collections are, backstage, in a studio, in a basement, in an attic, wherever it might be. Takes about an hour to set up, and then we can shoot an entire collection inside of a couple of hours. Nothing needs to be touched, nothing needs to be re-imaged, and it all can be loaded straight to the wholesale platform. So if you can play the next video, this is a bit of an insight into the Orb. She's beautiful, by the way. So a model just walks into that cabinet, bang, instantaneously it does 360-degree images and uploads it straight to the platform. So we've sort of solved that first problem from the buyer's perspective. They can now understand every element, they can zoom in and they can see it. So we're starting to tick the boxes on making them feel comfortable about ordering online. Okay, another great asset that we have is fashion shows. So obviously, why designers have fashion shows when they're selling their wholesale collections? For movement and drape and fit. I want to see what this jacket looks like. I want to see how it walks and moves. Okay, so we have these great assets. But again, buyers can't always be, as you guys are doing, sitting in the front row and having that great experience. So through virtual reality, Ord now brings all those fashion shows to the buyers in their offices. So all our buyers in our network, so we have 2,600 individual retail organizations, 5,000 individual buyers, and we're on the process of providing them with a very, very simple to use VR headset, which takes them front row into Paris. So what I'm going to do now There we are. Why don't you just have a look around, just pass it around, and we'll get around as many people as we can. So you're now sitting in the front row of the Proenza School Show in Paris. And you can sit there and you can watch all the collections. The second generation of our VR is really interesting. Second generation comes with a little clicker. So as you're watching the show from your desk and you're seeing everything, you've got this little clicker, and the outfits you like, you just click and it automatically saves it back into your edited selection in our online showroom. So you can sit there and view the whole fashion show, and then all your selections already made, and it's really easy. So interactive VR is coming soon. And I would just tell you all that, you know, as I pass this around, hands up who's experienced VR before? Okay, about a third of the room. So for many of you, this will be your first time. I can tell you the acceptance of virtual reality and augmented reality in the next 5 years is going to be phenomenal. I mean, you know, we're working with some Microsoft and Oculus Rift and a number of people in this areas, and how rapidly it's going to change the way we receive content is going to be incredible. So, VR is already there. So you can start to see that we're starting to, within our online showrooms, we've given people an understanding of every aspect. They can zoom in and see all the detail. They can now see the movement and drape. So we're starting to tick all the boxes a buyer wants to understand about collections. So what other things can we do to help make them feel comfortable in placing these huge wholesale orders online when they can't always get anywhere? So some other things we're working on at the moment is fit avatars. So a buyer from a big department store will have a standard shape sort of customer, and they're trying to figure out how to buy 6, 8, 10, 12 or whatever it might be and get their ranging right. So shortly we'll be able to do fit avatars around the customer shapes and put our 360-degree images on top of a retailer's customer to see whether in fact it fits or not. And of course, this has huge impact on a business to consumer. I mean, you know, we're speaking to Net-a-Porter on Monday about embedding some of our technology we're developing in a business-to-business sense into a business-to-consumer. And just imagine if you can go onto Net-a-Porter and your own personal fit avatar can try on clothes. Now, there's about 200 companies around the world working on various innovations and technologies, and we're hoping to be able to commercialize a view in a business-to-business sense for the fashion industry that will eventually flow on. Some other exciting things that we're working on with IBM Watson. We're working with them about how we can involve artificial intelligence and machine learning into the platform. So if you're a buyer and you're watching the show and you're seeing and you're understanding, you've got a question, it's like, can you explain to me a bit more about the fabrication? Well, the platform will answer you back in real time. You'll actually talk to it, and there will be you know, a real live robots responding to you that have been fed with all the data about a particular collection. One of the really interesting technologies that we're working with an institute in France at the moment is touch and feel technology. So a lot of the old school buyers, as we go around and we present what we're doing with Ord to retailers that have been around for many years, and they're like, you know, well, darling Simon, this all sounds fantastic, and, you know, but we like to sit down with the designer and touch and feel and understand. And so we understand that's an important box we need to tick eventually. So we're working with technologies which allows us to do the 3D architecture scanning of the outside of the fabric and replicate that, one through fiber optics on a touchpad. So as you run your fingers across the touchpad, you feel whether it's wool or fur. And then another one we're working on is again, architecture of the fabric, but using sound waves this time, and reversing those sound waves through a glass plate. And as you run your finger across the glass tablet, you feel the difference between silk or jersey. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary. It's a few years from being commercialized, but we're hoping to be the first company to commercialize it, to bring it to the business of fashion. Some other areas that are really interesting, we've just started to work with Microsoft. They've opened a number of really interesting hologram technology labs around the world. So we want to, in the headset is fantastic with virtual reality and interaction. It's like you're sitting in the front row. But just imagine if you could be sitting at your desk, and along the desk was the actual fashion show with the models walking in front of you as holograms. Well, this technology is already available. You know, just imagine if you could be sitting at your desk and you could stop the show and look at this model and spin it around, look at it, okay, that's great, yeah, I like that touch, put that in my selection. So holograms are bringing 3D to life in a real projection in a real place. It's very, very interesting, and Microsoft's lab in London, we're doing some new work with them, and we're hoping to be able to present that to the industry shortly. So very interesting stuff. Okay, the next step is, why do we even need to make samples? Do you know how much the industry spends sampling for the wholesale, for ready-to-wear collections? Yes, you absolutely need to specify what fabric, you need to specify your patterns and your style and your silhouettes. And then the next process is, okay, I'm going to send that to a sample maker, and I'm going to purchase, I can't afford all the colorways, I can only afford to sample 2 colorways, and in 2 different sort of fabric types, but I'll have little swatches, and I'll show the buyers the swatches, they'll get the idea, okay? Well, just imagine, and you don't even have to imagine, because we're doing our first virtual showroom next season with AF Van der Vorst out of Belgium, where they will do sketches, they'll do the patterns from those sketches, and then through 3D animation, we will virtually create those samples. So the samples will physically never be produced. The samples will be shown in a virtual showroom. So that's a hooded jacket there. You can't tell whether that's a photographic image or whether in fact it is a 3D animation. It's in fact a 3D animation. So if we can make that spin, okay, just imagine if we can take that virtual sample and put it in a hologram and make it move. So these are new technologies that are coming to the forefront of the business of fashion. So, does that mean that fashion weeks as we know them are dead? Does that mean that buyers aren't going to travel anymore? No, it doesn't. It means that this is going to be a channel, a very viable online channel. It's going to sit alongside traditional fashion weeks, be they business-to-business fashion weeks or business-to-consumer fashion weeks, the traditional showrooms, and online showrooms. And also this technology is also going to be brought into the physical showroom space. So if I could just play the last video, please. The one that we had queued up. So now we take our 360-degree images and we have them on huge, giant touch screens so that designers can have them in their showroom. So we can now have modelless showrooms. I mean, it's such a labour and time-consuming thing. Oh, can you go and try this on? Now you can see everything on a model. And then, of course, here's a designer showing everything in 360-degree view on the iPad. The buyer can make the selection in the showroom, and then when they go back to the desktop, they can place the order. So it's not just about technology online. It's also about how can that technology be used in the physical sense, in physical showrooms. And of course, as a designer, when you work with us and you've invested and you're involved in all these digital assets and technology, you have 360-degree view, you've got virtual reality experiences, perhaps you've got holograms, you've got touchscreen technology. Well, of course, everything you've created for business to business, you can then use for business to consumer. All those 360-degree images you can use on your own e-commerce site. You can use it in your social media. The virtual reality experience, you can take it into the shop and say, look, you weren't able to come to our fashion show, but please sit down over here and we'll give you the front row experience, and then you can go shopping for it. Or, you know, it's impossible for you to try everything on in the store, but why don't you use the giant touch screens and at least see what everything looks like on a model? So I'm really of the belief that as a designer, you know, one of the most important things in your business is going to be creating and owning these digital assets, and to use them first in business to business, and then later into business to consumer. So it's a very, very interesting time to be involved in the fashion industry. I think as a generation, and I involve myself in you young people out there as well in saying that, is we're really, really lucky because we're the generation which is taking the fashion industry from an analog paradigm to this new digital paradigm. We're the generation that's going to make the changes. The things that I'm speaking about now and the technology we're bringing to the business of fashion, they are going to be the norm. I can tell you right now, in a decade's time, having an online wholesale showroom will just be part and parcel of how our industry does business. Fashion weeks will still exist. We as a community love getting together to meet each other, to discuss face-to-face with retailers, to create opinions, to have parties, to celebrate, to promote our partners. Fashion weeks are morphing into many things. And the business of fashion is always going to be done face-to-face. If you're a designer and you've got a big relationship with a department store or a big relationship with a blogger or a media, of course you're always going to meet them. And this is not about saying that the whole world is going to change and fashion weeks are going to disappear. It's just saying that, you know, in that whole very confusing, broken fashion system, you know, there's a lot of things going on there. All we're saying as an organisation is that online showrooms are going to be part of the future of the business of fashion, and you know, we're really excited about the new technologies that are being developed and being brought to the industry. So that's about it from me. I don't know whether anybody wanted to have any questions or wanted to speak to me after the show, but here from Fashion Forward, what we're doing is that next week we're uploading a lot of online showrooms for the designers that participated here. So we didn't bring our 360 equipment here, but all the catwalk images and all the video are going to go out to our retail network. And so hopefully we'll be able to create a profile, particularly for the younger emerging designers that have showcased here to the top retailers around the world. And so, you know, we're very happy to be here as a supportive partner of Fashion Forward. Does anyone have... Thank you. If no one has any questions, I'll say farewell. Thank you. Oh, question up the back. We'll just have to wait until a microphone. If you could just introduce yourself first.
Hi, I'm Mariam Ahmad. I was wondering, for emerging designers, there's a lot of technology that they feel pressured to use almost all of it. What would you recommend
I'm
for
sorry,
them?
I can't hear you.
Can
Can you
hear
just
me?
maybe get really close
Like
to your mouth?
this.
That's better.
For emerging designers, they feel a lot of pressure to use all of the technology available to them, but it's a really time-consuming process. What would you recommend for them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, initially embracing anything new is really time consuming, and getting to understand how all this technology works does take some time and effort. I absolutely agree with you. But my advice to you is invest that time and energy now. You get quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. It's just like when you get a new phone, isn't it? And it takes you a couple of days to figure out, and then it all of a sudden becomes innate, and you really get so you don't be scared by the time and energy you've got to put into it, because I think, you know, the investment return is definitely there in terms of your time and energy. Sure. The question was how many cameras are inside the scanner and how long did it take for us to develop the technology. It's all very secretive. So let me say it's many cameras. Some of the technology has come from mobile technology. It basically brings together three technologies: data capture, integrated lighting, and then also stitching software. So there's a technology, and it's the components of the three, and also the hardware. But yeah, it did take quite a long time to figure out. Yes.
So you brought the wholesale to the internet for the buyers, but regarding the designers, the new and young designers, how? Wait, let me put it straight. How do young designers that don't have that much money to invest in those kind of things and platforms would be able to reach out to you or to other showrooms? because of course Diane van Furstenberg, Prabal Gurung, and all those kind of high-level designers do have the money to get to you and to get to those technologies. So isn't there a gap for the younger creatives?
Right. We hope to try and fill that gap. Really important part of our DNA is for every established designer we work with, we're working with an emerging designer. So we're partners with the British Fashion Council on the new generation designers. We support them. We're partners with Camera della Moda on Fashion Hub. We're a partner in Shanghai Fashion Week. We're a partner in the International Walmart Prize. So emerging designers is really part of our DNA, because retailers just don't want an easy way to buy Diana von Furstenberg. They want to discover new talent as well. And Kirsten, who is our fashion director over there, her whole life is involved around discovering new emerging designers and getting them involved in our platform. And we understand the business of fashion, and we understand that you have no money. So we have a pathway which allows young emerging designers to come in and grow with us. So it's a very important part of our business. So if you're interested, please speak to Kirsten.
Hi. So
just closer to your mouth.
Okay. So what sort of risk do you think, this sort of software or this sort of program can have? Why I'm asking this is because the various brands, various designers who bring their creativity to a certain level, and they want to be distinct, they want to be different. Don't you think when everything will be open and available on this platform, as we see how the trendsetters and then the fashion followers, how they take it downstream. The fashion today, it takes almost, or a trend lasts for almost a year and a half, because it's just coming downstream. I feel, on this platform, when the fashion is available to almost everybody, including like a value retailer like me who's sitting right here, who has 200 stores, I mean, I'll be able to see the fashion right at the beginning. How do you think that, the trends would evolve for a longer period than what it's happening today?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of points to your question. The first point is we are very, very protective of who has the opportunity to come into the online showrooms. Obviously, you need to be a credentialed retailer, and it also needs to be a retailer that our designers are happy to allow to come into an online showroom. So it's no one they wouldn't invite into their physical showrooms first. Some designers are so protective that while they're part of our ecosystem, they will only allow their existing retailers to come into their online showroom. So there is some protection. And also, too, we have a great focus on security within our network. So, if you are a retailer or if you are a fast fashion store and you're trying to come into the online showrooms, you'll find it extraordinarily difficult. We have a number of hacking measures that are really a very strong firewall to protect what we have. So you're right, it is an important part of the protecting the intellectual property and design integrity of our designers. We do it a number of ways, security, and also about letting certain retailers into certain stores. In terms of the longevity of the trends, the comment I would make on that is that there's been a lot of conversation around the fashion industry to extend these trends longer so that everyone can benefit from them. And the best example I would use at the moment is if you look at what's happening with Gucci. We're not seeing Alessandro, the relatively new designer, completely changing his look and feel each season. We're seeing him build on it, develop it, embellish it, and make it more interesting each season. So we're not seeing radical changes. And I think to their business, that makes commercial sense, that they've built a strong customer for this look and this feel and this aesthetic, and they don't want to lose that customer. They want to keep adding more customers. And in the past, a lot of designers have been, okay, that was last season, now I'm completely new and completely different. And then the customer's going, oh, I don't get this, I love that. So, and we're seeing this in Balenciaga with Dima, he hasn't completely radically changed what he started at Balenciaga. So I think we're starting to see the bigger design houses wanting to get longer out of their looks and feels, and they want to get, I guess, economies of scale out of production and products. And then, of course, we're going to see that filter down to the high street retailers. So I don't know if that's an answer, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, everyone. I know we have another show to come to, but I must, before I leave, tell you all that I'm completely boring compared to Godfrey. Okay, Godfrey will be on at 7:30, having a fantastic interview about his life and times reporting from the front row. So I would encourage you all to come and hear Godfrey. But from me, from now, thank you. Bye bye.